So may you please tell me how to analyze the gathered data? And what are the things that you can find in chapter 4? Last time, we discussed about chapter 4, the statistical treatment or the things that you're going to do in your chapter 4, the table, the interpretation, the implication, and the like. May you please tell me what are the things that you can find in chapter 4? Anyone? Carlos, cut mo agad yun. Walang sumasagot. Hoy, Agnes. Baka naman. Yes, Chin.
For the second question po, the thing that I could find in chapter 4 po is results and discussion.
Okay. In chapter 4, guys, thank you, Chin. You'll have your results and discussion. Okay. First that you will do in your chapter 4. Let me show you guys an example. Let me show again the example and how are you going to do your chapter 4. By the way, guys, I'll upload a whole research. Immediately after this meeting, I'll upload a whole research for survey research design, for experimental research design, for comparative research design, and correlational research design. Guys, please do not plagiarize that work. Like, for example, when you enter in college, do not use that research. Do not use that research because, of course, it's done. It's done. Whole chapter 1 to chapter 5, including appendices and other parts of the research. So do not plagiarize it or do not copy the content of it. I'll just upload it for your guide. Okay, this one. Can you see it, guys? Not yet. Wait. Okay. So for your chapter 4, guys, this one. We will use this format. We will use this format. Again, for your chapter 4, we will use this format. First, introduce. Introduce the content of chapter 4. Second, label it results and sorry for this one. Do not place it here. Just place it after the frequency and percentage distribution. So let's have here the results and discussion. Okay, first, I have shown this last time. The first table that you will show in your chapter 4 would be your frequency and percentage distribution of respondents according to college. So, if you're conducting survey research design, if you're conducting correlational research design, if you're conducting experimental, if you're conducting comparative, the first table that you'll show is the frequency and percentage distribution of respondents according to relevant category. Like, for example, age, gender, and so on. And if you are conducting experimental research design wherein you don't have a respondents, of course, you will not do this because you don't have respondents. Is that clear? Okay, so that's the first table. Again, in all researches that you will have this frequency and percentage distribution of respondents according to relevant category like age, gender, religion, and so on and so forth. Except for experimental research, if you don't have participants or respondents in the study, you will not do this table. Next, of course, there should be interpretation and interpretation about this table. Next thing to show is this one. Okay, if you are conducting survey research design, please focus on the first section of your survey questionnaire or showing the result of the first data of your first section in your in your questionnaire. Sorry, it's redundant. Guys, this one. In your survey questionnaire, it should be aligned with your statement of the problem. So just align your data with your answer in your statement of the problem. Like for example, you're answering your question number one, so it should be in the first section of your, in your survey questionnaire. So it's like that. So like for example, uh, if you're conducting correlational research design, your question is like for example, what is the average level of academic motivation of the students? So you should focus on that first. Present the data about the level of motivation because that's your first question in your statement of the problem. There should be alignment with your chapter 4 and your statement of the problem to be specific with your specific problems. That clear? So the data that you will present in chapter 4 should be aligned with your specific problems, and of course, the organization should also be the same with the organization of your specific problems. Is that clear? Except for the demographic, because we are showing it in the first table of your research. But the following tables that you will show, it should be aligned with your answer with your specific problems. Is that clear, guys? So it's your problem, guys, if your survey questionnaire is not aligned with your questions in the specific problems. Yeah, it's a big problem if your survey questionnaire is not aligned with your specific problems, or your questionnaire cannot really answer your specific problems. Because, isn't it, guys? Our main goal in our research is for us to answer our specific problems. And we can answer it in chapter 4. In chapter 4, we will present the data that we have collected from our respondents. There is already there's already a table, contains the numbers, contains their answers, contains all the data that you have collected from the respondents. Now in chapter 5, that's the time that we will summarize the data that you have collected. So in chapter 5, guys, later we will discuss it, but let me discuss the alignment. So your chapter 4 must be aligned with the organization of your specific problems, because basically this is your answer to your specific problems, but in a way that you will show the data first. But in chapter 5, that's the moment that we will really answer our questions in the specific problems. That's why, guys, our chapter 5 is aligned with our chapter 4. Yes, it's aligned with our chapter 4, but in chapter 5, we will summarize our data. Like, for example, in chapter 5, you will have your summary of findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Your summary of findings, of course, it's the summary of the data that you have collected. So it's in on chapter 4 already, right? So you will summarize it in chapter 5, specifically in summary of findings. Now, how many paragraphs do you need in the summary of findings? If you have three paragraphs if you have three questions in your specific problems, so basically you should also have three paragraphs of your in your summary of findings. One paragraph, or the first paragraph, for your findings for the first specific problem. Second paragraph for your findings for the second specific problem. Third paragraph for your summary of findings in the third specific problem. So basically, it's aligned. So these findings, where are you going to get this? From your chapter 4. You will just summarize the data in chapter 4, or your findings that you have presented in chapter 4. So later, I will also elaborate conclusions and recommendations in our discussions. But again, the most important thing now is that you have a survey questionnaire that is aligned with your specific problems, because the data that you'll show in chapter 4 will be aligned with the organization of your specific problem, because you are just like answering your specific problems in your statement of the problem. Is that clear, guys? So basically, this is just sample tables. These are just sample tables with what do you call this? With different statistical tools that we use here. So I'll just show you, like for example, here. This one is applicable for correlational research design. This one is applicable for correlational research design if you want to show first your first variable or your individual variable. Isn't it, if you're conducting correlational research design, you have two quantitative variables. So um, present it individually first. So this one is the presentation and interpretation of the first variable, or the variable that you have, individual variable that you have. And then if you want also, after showing the two variables separately, like for example, you have two tables like this for your two variables, then you will have this table. You'll have this table combining the data of your first variable and second variable. But do not correlate it yet. Do not correlate it yet. And then next is that you will correlate it. Sorry, this is not that one. You will correlate it here. This one. This would be the format in correlating it and knowing the result of your hypothesis. If you will prove or disprove that hypothesis that you have in your research. So this would be the last table. If you're conducting correlational research, this would be the last table that you have. The first table, frequency and percentage distribution of respondents. Second table, presentation of your first variable. Second table, presentation of second variable. Fourth table, presentation of two variables. Fifth table is the presentation of the correlation and for the hypothesis testing. This one, this one is for correlation and hypothesis testing already. Guys, this one you can get this through through getting through having the regression in the Excel. Because isn't it, in if you will correlate using Excel, you'll just get the value of R, which is this one. But you cannot really get the significance. The value of significance, or the p value that we are using in interpreting our data, or in our decision for our hypothesis. So this one, guys, can you see, guys? Have you tried the Excel? Have you tried the Excel? This one, you can get this using the formula of regression, wherein it will it will um it will show. That regression, you can see there the significance f, the word significance f, and there's a value there. Do you want me to show it? Who's conducting correlational research here? Who's conducting correlational research here? Okay, I'll stop presenting this first. But this is the last table. This is the last table for your research, for the correlational research design. This one is for you to know the correlation of the two. So you will have the value of R. So you will use correlation formula in Excel for you to get this. You'll correlate the data. Then after that is the regression for you to know the p-value or the significance f. And that's the basis for your interpretation. If there is a significant relationship between two variables. In this case, guys, 0.000, what does it mean? Is there a significant relationship, or there's no significant relationship between the two variables? The two variables here is the self-efficacy and level of motivation. Oy, what's the interpretation? Is this more than 0.05 or less than 0.05? St. Agnes. Again, if our p-value is less than 0.05 and 0.000 is less than 0.05, so what would be the interpretation? Is there a significant relationship between self-efficacy and motivation? Anyone? Anyone? Again, is there a significant relationship between self-efficacy and motivation if your p-value is 0.000 and it is less than 0.05? Anyone, guys? Gail, any idea?
Um, there is a significant difference po.
Significant relationship. Okay, it's relationship because this is a correlational research design. Okay, there is a significant relationship between motivation and self-efficacy because guys, um, 0.00 is less than 0.05. And if that is the case, if that's the case, this p-value is less than our level of significance of 0.05, meaning it is significant. So there is a significant relationship between the two. And if you will look for your person art chart, guys, if you will look for what is the interpretation for 0.847 or what type of relationship do they have, you will find out that they have what? They have strong positive significant relationship. Do you agree with me? Do you have your person art chart with you? 0.847 means strong positive significant relationship. Is that clear? So this one will be interpreted that um, self-efficacy and motivation have strong positive significant relationship because in using correlation using Excel, guys, I have taught you already that we got 0.847. And this one, of course, if you will look in your person art chart, you will find out that this one means positive or strong positive relationship. And then 0.00, wherein you can get this through computing, through having regression in your Excel, and then looking on the significance F there, you will find out that the significance is 0.00, wherein it's less than the 0.05. And if you will interpret it, there is a significant relationship between the two. The same with significant difference. If it's less than 0.00, if it's less than 0.05, meaning is there is a significant difference. Is that clear, guys? Okay. So, for correlational, we're done. For survey research, how about for survey research design? So, the same with what I have taught you earlier. For survey research design, um, have have a table for frequency and percentage distribution first. And then the next one is showing your data for your answer in your specific problem number one. Then number two, showing the next table would be data showing your data for your second specific problem. For your specific problem number two. And the next table or the next data that you'll show in chapter 4 will be your data as your answer in number 3 question in your specific problem. So it's like that. And it's done. And it's done. Then how about for comparative research design? If you're studying a comparative research design, it's like this again. So frequency and percentage distribution. Then you will have you have first showing the first group. Like for example, you have the first group of respondents, showing the data for the first group. Then next is showing the data for the second group of your respondents. And then next is showing the data for two groups like this. For example, imagine that this is for comparative research design that you have two groups, for example. And then after that, showing the two groups or the data for two groups, use the correct statistical analysis or statistical procedure in computing the data and for the table. Like for example, you have two groups of respondents. Like for example here, private and public senior high school graduates. Of course, you need to show independent sample t-test result because you're comparing two groups of respondents. Is that clear? So you'll show like this. And actually, this is done because in using independent sample t-test, you will also have the data for the p-value. And then this would be the basis for the interpretation of your hypothesis, which is Like for example, in your hypothesis, there's no significant difference between the two variable. I mean between two groups. So you can answer it because there's a p-value already. And if the p-value is less than 0.05, ibig sabihin or it means that there is a significant difference. But sorry, if it's less than, and if it's greater than 0.05, there is no significant difference. That is in comparative research design. So like here, the p-value is 0.960, meaning it's greater than 0.05. So if we are going to interpret it, meaning there is no significant difference between the two because 0.960 is greater than 0.05. Did you get it? Again, for comparative, this would be your last table, showing the two groups and of course, showing the significant difference of the two as your answer in your hypothesis of the study. Is that clear? How about now for experimental research design? Actually, this is the best research last year, experimental research design. Okay, so for your chapter 4, if you're conducting experimental research design, of course, you should have your introduction. Then if you don't have respondents, there should not be frequency and percentage distribution of respondents. You proceed on the data. So in this one, they need this. But in your case, guys, you are you are really free. It depends on what you're conducting, what you're experimenting in your research. Because, like for example, in this case, we are focused on solar cells. We are focused on organic. What do you call this? I cannot really pronounce it, but um, what's this, guys? Organic. Okay, this one. Basta we are testing voltage production. Okay, this one. This one with or without die voltage production at different times of the day. Like for example, this one. This one is very critical. This one is very hard. So, nasubaybayan ko yung paggawa ng research na to at pag nasubaybayan kung paano nila ginawa yung experiment kasi sa school namin to ginawa, even ODL. So, in this case, tinetest namin kung yung katas ba ng sibuyas ay pwede siyang yes, yung katas talaga ng sibuyas, ginagamit siya as dye. So, organic dye yung gamit namin. Tinitingnan namin kung okay yung mapoproduce na voltage, kung madadagdagan ba. So, yun. Ito yung mga testing na nagawa. Kung mapapansin nyo, ang pinakikita na nila is the testing that they have done. That they have done in their experiment. So, iyon lang naman yung papapakita nilang data sa chapter 4. Wala silang mapapakitang ibang data. Now, in your case, binigyan ko kayo ng sample, sila Erica and Sam, kasi dalawa lang ata mag-experimental research dito. Yung pinakita ko sa inyong research naman, iyon naman is about sa mga, medyo related naman sa mga ginagawa nyong experiment. Kasi ito medyo mahirap tong intindihin. Like ito kasi yung lumalabas dun sa may mga, alam niyo naman, pag naiintindihan niyo yung kuryente, yung voltage, ganyan siya. So, tumaas, bumaba, tumaas ulit, ganyan siya. So, yung blue, yung with anthocyanin, tapos yung orange without anthocyanin. Ano ibig sabihin? Yung wala nung treatment nila, yung color blue, yung may treatment nila, yung color orange. So, yan. Tapos may interpretation. So, ganun din sa inyo. Pagka may mga data kayong pinapresent, you will have this data. I mean, you'll have this table, you'll have this graph, and then, of course, you should have your interpretation about what you're showing in your chapter 4. For experimental research, you are very free kung paano nyo ipapresent yung ginawa nyo sa experiment nyo or yung data nyo. Kaya at this moment, iba-iba, kung mapapansin nyo, kung sinendan ko kayo ng sample na ng buong research paper ng experimental research, hindi masyadong kamukha dito. Kasi, depende yun sa pinag-experimentohan nyo. Like for example, sila Erica, ano yung itetest nyo, Erica?
yung noise reduction coefficient po ng gagawin namin na bio-inspired na,
Di ba, Erica, may computation kayo doon?
yes po.
So, kailangan yung mapakita yun sa chapter 4 nyo. So, kila Sam, may computation ba kayo? Wala, di ba? Wala ba?
Wala po ma'am, more on measurements po.
Okay, so yun lang yung papakita nyo po dun sa may chapter 4. Yung result ng testing din nyo, pakita nyo, tapos maglagay kayo ng table, ano nangyari dun sa mga test ninyo, before and after, so something like that. So yun lang yung papakita nyo kay chapter 4. And then in chapter 5, of course, you'll summarize the data or you will have your general conclusion. So, eto po medyo, ayan, tricky. Medyo mahirap intindihin. Ganyan po yung chapter 4 nila. And kaya rin nagustuhan ni Sir Polly kasi sobrang tiyaga ng mga researchers na to. So, ang nagja-judge po ng best research ay si Sir Polly. So, isa-send ko lang lahat ng mga researches nyo at yung hard copy, siya po yung mag-check at mag-judge kung sino yung best research. So, in this case kasi may mga computation silang nagawa at meron silang per hypothesis testing. Ito na yung per hypothesis testing nila. So, yan. Kung may ganito yung research nyo, send ko to, i-upload ko to sa Aralinks. Kung may mga ganyang computation. Pero again, if you're conducting experimental, you are free kasi depende yan kung ano yung inaaral mo, ano yung pinag-e-experimentuhan mo. But kung may ganitong mga computation like this, so pwede ko itong i-upload sa Yara Links at gawin yung basis. Pero kung makikita nyo guys, kaya ko lang to i-upload kasi yung chapter 4 nila super aligned sa chapter 5 nila. At yung chapter 4 nila, align yon sa specific problems nila kung makikita nyo. Kahit experimental research design to, nagawa nila ng paraan na i-align yung chapter 4 nila sa chapter 5. Yung chapter 4 nila sa specific problems at sa chapter 5 as well. So, yan po. Ito yung chapter 5 nila. Yan. Yan lang. Maikli lang yan, di ba? Summary nga eh. Tapos, conclusion, maikli lang din. And then, recommendations. Tapos, yan, references. Yung tables po na pe-present nyo, horizontal line lang ha. Kung may a-upload man akong buong table, hindi ko na po siya kasi nabago. Pero sundin nyo po yung una ko pong in-upload na results and discussion. Yung ginamit natin last time. For the organization of table.